Paul, Cindy, welcome. Thanks for joining us here at Auxilium. I know Vernon, Lucas, and I are very excited. We hope you're excited. Your financial plan is done. And so today we'd like to just go over some of the highlights of that, and then later you can take it home and you can review it in more detail and come back and ask us some questions.
Yes, please.
So let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
All right. Good afternoon, Paul, Cindy. Looking at your guys' needs, obviously number one is being able to afford retirement and retire comfortably. That's our number one need. We also mentioned, you guys mentioned some wishes and wants. Those include visiting your children. If you could do that annually, that'd be awesome, I'm assuming. Paul, you enjoy hosting the summer family vacation. You want to continue that legacy.
That's great.
Also, new car purchase for each of you guys. And we also have your guys' wants to contribute to both Paul Jr. and John's weddings. And finally, overseas travel and your kitchen remodel upon retirement. Brennan.
All right. Paul and Cindy, as you can see, this is just a graphical representation of your expenses. So you can really see how these expenses compound over time. So you can see that we need to build up a bunch of reserves to be able to meet all of these needs. You want to hit the next slide,
Yeah.
Lucas? And then this slide is showing you your net worth statement, which is we recommend you review this and update this annually so that you know where you stand. Probably do it at the beginning of the year when you're doing all your taxes, you have all your forms out. Update this information so you can know where you stand. As you can see, right now you have investable assets of around $730,000, which is a great job. Your other major asset is your home, and then your only liability right now is the mortgage that you have on your home, and you will be paying that off not too far into retirement. And so right now you sit at around $1 million worth of net worth. So congratulations.
All right, so now I'm going to talk about your asset allocation and how it relates to the risk that your portfolio should have. Basically, asset allocation is one of the biggest drivers and determinants of how successful you'll be in retirement. Right now, you have about 80% in stocks in your current portfolio, and that's relatively aggressive. When we look at your risk profiles, you'll see that neither of you really indicated that you would be that comfortable with that much risk. So let's take a look. What this graph is going to show us is our recommended asset allocation, right? We want to have you at about 55% in equities, 40% in fixed income, and then hold on to 5% in cash. Someone typically of your age would be right about there, about 50% in equities. If we look at your risk profiles, Cindy, you indicated you were at about a 45 out of 100, and then Paul, you were at about 70. So when we take the average of those, we get about 57, which is about what we want to have you at.
All right, looking at the results, both current and recommended. As you can see in this first gauge, I guess you could call it, your current scenario, it's not looking as good as it could at all. We have a probability of success well below 40%, and that's, as I said, the current scenario, going through with each one of your wishes and wants and your goals every year, staying in the current asset allocation that you're in, etc. Looking at the chart or the gauge to the right of that, we're in the green. We're looking really good, and that's incorporating all of our recommendations and the changes that we're going to make to your plan, which we're going to get into here shortly, and pretty much doubling the probability of you being successful in retirement.
Now let's talk about some of the changes we're going to need to make in your needs and wants and goals to get us to that suggested plan where you have that high percentage chance of achieving all your goals. The biggest thing we can change to ensure success is the year in which you retire. Having that extra maybe couple years of accumulating assets so you have more assets in retirement makes all the difference in the world. What we suggest is that, Paul, you wait until you're 68 to retire. And then also at the same time, Cindy, so you can retire in the same year, waiting until you're 66. This will allow your investments to compound even further, and so you have more upon retirement.
And I'd like to touch upon the changes in your guys' goals. As you can see, your current scenario, your retirement income needs, basically your everyday living expenses are right around $120,000 a year. We would like to cut that back by 10%. That shouldn't be hard once you hit retirement. Cut your cut expenses around 10%, along with your indicated extra monthly savings of around $750 a month, which you indicated you can start doing that immediately, which would be great, and we need to get you into that confidence zone. Here on this slide shows the rest of your wants and your wishes that you've indicated. You're visiting your children every year. We don't foresee you having to change anything there. Summer family vacation, we would suggest decreasing that 5 years of hosting that till around Paul, maybe around 80 years old, maybe passing the torch to Paul Jr. or John, taking over the hosting of the summer family vacation. Paul's new car purchase, you did indicate you would love to have a convertible, a BMW convertible. We're showing you can do that if you want to do that. Cindy, you're a little bit more modest vehicle, you can get a new vehicle as well. And we would suggest, instead of holding on to those for 5 years, keeping them one extra year to holding on every 6 years. You can still contribute to Paul Jr. and John's wedding if you would like, which would be really great. And overseas travel. This one, we do suggest decreasing the number of occurrences down to around 4. Should still give you plenty of options to travel the world for a few years immediately in retirement, while you guys can still go out there and enjoy everything and be mobile. And then the kitchen remodel definitely can accomplish that, which would be great, which would also increase the value of your home. So that's definitely something that we would like you to accomplish.
All right, looking into savings, we mentioned, you guys, I should say, mentioned how you were comfortable with cutting back the $750 per month in your living expenses. That $750 we would actually allocate towards Paul's retirement. And being that we're going to do so, that is actually going to be more than $750, being that it is pre-tax dollars. It comes out to about another $200. So around $950, that's going to be allocated towards your 401k. The reasons we're doing this, one, you're not taking full advantage of your company match towards your retirement. So by doing so, this is going to meet that and also surpass that. This is, 2, going to reduce your taxable income. And 3, contributing more into your plan, obviously, and thus you're going to have more money upon retirement and to use throughout retirement.
So, like we said earlier, you had about 80% in equities, which is pretty risky. And we measure risk in standard deviation. This risky environment that you're currently in equates to a standard deviation of 17.81. This is relatively high. So what we're going to want to do is reduce your standard deviation, basically slash it. We're going to put it down to 12.44%, and this is up until you retire. This will bring your risk level down to be more appropriate towards your age and your tolerance for risk. Once you enter the capital preservation phase of your life, we're going to want to decrease it even more. So we plan to take your standard deviation down all the way to 7.46%, and this is going to better ensure that you will reach all your goals.
And also, just want to reiterate, so how Brandon mentioned, that's, like you said, slashing your standard deviation. At the same time, it's not really hurting your return, your overall return. Where it is cutting your standard deviation almost by half, we're only really reducing your total return by 1%. And that's just being smart with your investments, utilizing the correct portfolio selection.
All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit about your Social Security strategy. A lot of advisors don't really talk about the different options available to you in selecting Social Security strategies. So what we did was take your specific information and we applied it towards several different common strategies, one of them being waiting and taking your Social Security at full retirement age. This wasn't as favorable as some of the other strategies. Ultimately, we came up with the strategy that best puts your money to work for you. So our strategy that we recommend is that Paul files and suspends, and Cindy files a restricted application.
Okay, looking at your current allocation and your current scenario, current situation, looking at this graph, it's showing, as you can see, a decent and very significant dip upon the end of the plan. Not the ideal situation whatsoever. Vernon's going to discuss how we look in the recommended scenario.
All right, this graph looks a lot better. This is including all of our recommendations. If you guys implement our recommendations, as you can see, this equates to that over 75% probability of success. So it means pushing retirement back a couple of years. As you can see, that means accumulating, a bunch more assets in your war chest there. And then as you're going through, you're spending your assets, but as you can see, the value of your entire portfolio doesn't fall that much. So that means with average returns in the market, you guys are sitting great. But if there's below average returns, you still have a relatively giant cushion to be able to provide that you meet all your needs, and later in your later years in retirement, you're not going to have to worry about running out of money, because that's obviously a big worry about retirement. Running out of money, that's not a good thing.
Your kids will appreciate that too.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Paul, Cindy, how did we come up with these recommendations? We ran what's called a Monte Carlo simulation. Basically, real quick, looking at this one, this is your current scenario. Running the Monte Carlo simulation, what it does is runs 10,000 scenarios basically against really good bull markets where the market's doing really well, where the economy's looking really good, and as well as a bunch of bear markets where our economy is bad, we're going into recession basically. By doing so, this gives us our results. And as you can see here, the current scenario, that's where our probability of success is really low. We're down well below 40%. Switching gears into our recommended portfolio, recommended scenario, rerunning our Monte Carlo scenario, this is going to put us into that probability of success being pretty much double, well over double the current situation, current scenario.
All right, guys, now I would like to briefly talk about a couple items we have left here for insurance. You told us that you currently do have level term policies through your employer. We think that's great utilization. They're relatively cheap. These should be ending upon your retirement, and we actually do not see much of a need for you to purchase any extra policies beyond retirement. You guys should have most all of your expenses taken care of with the money you have saved up, and then once you hit retirement, you only have a few years left of liabilities of your mortgage that if one of you should happen to pass, you still get spousal benefits on Cindy's pension, Social Security, plus your invested assets again, that we really don't see much of a need for whole life insurance for you guys. All the kids are out of the house, all the major expenses are taken care of. What you need is long-term care insurance. With healthcare costs rising, you could end up in a situation where you need to spend a lot of money on the last few years of life. Paul and Cindy, you guys indicated your parents are worried about this. So what we would recommend is you go ahead and try to get some long-term care insurance as fast as you can. Lock in the rates now while you're right around 60, and then you don't have to worry about ever having to deplete all of your assets if one of you ends up in a nursing home.
Absolutely. And lastly, from myself, we're going to incorporate this action plan basically, and you'll see it. I'm going to basically print it out for you, and this is going to just include everything, all the steps broken down. Basically, we want to get a good time frame and kind of like a checklist. We can just go through it, and we're obviously going to be in touch on a periodic basis, and be able to just go ahead and check these items off as we go, so we can move from this and into actual implementation.
All right, so I know that was a lot to digest. We went through a lot, but we know that you guys are probably going to want to talk about it. So we want you to take your plan home, talk it over, and then we can meet again. I think you mentioned February 11th. That's great for us. We can meet again. You can ask us any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you both very much.